Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caroline Viola. I am the recruiting assistant based out of our New York office. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Kearney virtual summer office visit. We just wanted to go through a couple logistics before we get kicked off here. So if you have any questions throughout this presentation, we know that we asked you to submit some questions before, but if any come up, please go ahead and use our Q&A pod. You'll find that on the right bottom corner. Know that it says to use the chat function, but please just use the Q&A. So now I am going to pass it off to Phil Caruso, who's going to go ahead and get us started today.
Thanks, Caroline, and hello, everybody. Welcome to Kearney. So we know you guys can't visit our offices in person here today, but we want to give you a chance to hear a little more about what being at Kearney is like and hear some of the flavor for the individual offices we have here in the U.S. To introduce myself, my name is Phil Caruso. I'm a principal based out of our New York office. I'm in our leadership change and organization practice. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a couple minutes, but I've been with the firm since 2007. I've been to business school and back, and I've been in 5 different offices over the years at Kearney, so have loved my time here. So who is Kearney? As you see on the slide here, there's a lot of words about how the values of the firm come through in our practice. But in short, we're a global firm. We have offices all over the world, over 40 offices in 50 plus countries. We have 3,600 colleagues around the world. And we also have a great set of clients, and over 2/3 of the Fortune 500 we work for, and through all those different elements around the work we do, we really believe in strong client service and also a passion for people within our firm as well. So hopefully you'll hear more of that through our colleagues here on our panel today. So Kearney has a number of values. Throughout the recruiting process, you're going to hear quite a bit about the different things that make consulting firms unique. These may seem a little consistent across what you might hear from other folks, but I think what's unique about Kearney is the way that these play together. And I know for me and personally, each of these values for the firm speaks to me through my experience. A couple of them that stand out in particular are around generosity. Our teams really do care about each other. Our consultants and across offices, across teams come together to support each other. And in boldness, that's always a favorite of mine because we're constantly being asked to bring the best new thinking to the table to solve our clients' problems. We are tasked with big responsibility and big challenges for some of the largest organizations in the world. And if you don't bring that sort of cutting edge thinking, then you're not doing your job well. And so for me, I spent most of last year working for a large consumer products company. Had a big team working across a bunch of different elements of that company on a global transformation. The CEO was closely involved in our work. We were called out on their earnings calls for over a year. And in leading that transformation, we would not have been successful if we weren't working with each other closely, working with our clients side by side, and again, bringing our best thinking and our passion to the table. So these 5 values here, you'll hear a lot of today, and they're what make Kearney uniquely us. So just to do a little bit of the blocking and tackling here, Kearney covers a lot of different parts of the business and public sector landscape. We have a number of different industry practices, which you'll see laid out here, as well as service practices below. We're a matrix structure, so you'll find that most consultants work along at least 1 or 2 of these different things on the page, and develop expertise quite quickly at the vertex of different parts of the matrix. So one of the pieces that hopefully you'll get to hear today from our panel is how each of those different practices and experiences has grown over time by being able to participate across such a broad range of clients within the firm. My personal experience, I started in our DC office, so I did quite a bit of work in our public sector practice, but I've also spent quite a bit of time in consumer products, in industrial services and private equity. And as I mentioned, I'm a service practitioner, so I do quite a bit of work in the leadership change and organization practice, where we focus on people issues like organizational change, leadership development, that kind of fun stuff. So happy to talk more about it later on. But with that, I think let's move on to our list of offices. And you can see here where we have representatives today from. And so what we're going to do today is just sort of step through a quick overview of each of them, and then we'll give each of you the chance to ask questions about Kearney and each of the different offices and some of the things you're hopefully going to be able to learn through the recruiting process heading into the fall.
Perfect. I can kick it off for Atlanta. Hey, everyone. I'm Emily McInturf. I'm an associate in the Atlanta office. I joined the firm a little over, I guess, 3 years ago, 3.5 years, straight out of undergrad, like a lot of you probably. And I came from Georgia Tech, so not very far from the Atlanta office. And that's kind of what kept me in Atlanta. A lot of my friends are here. And also through recruiting, I met a lot of people in the Atlanta office that I really got to know and really liked. So just going through here, we are one of the smaller offices to kick off. We have about 30 employees only, but what's great about that is that we are very tight-knit, which is awesome, and it gives us the opportunity where you can see in a lot of these pictures that we have started really bringing our family and personal life into all of our events because we really want to get to know everyone on a deeper level. So you can see in the top, there's a picture of us. Last year, our summer party was at a Braves game. We had a big private room that's right on the field, which was really fun. But everyone's kids came and everyone's significant others came. And so it's been really fun getting to know everybody's family outside of work. And for those that don't have family in Atlanta, bring their roommates or their best friends or whoever is important to them in their life. So on the bottom, that's where our office is. It's in Buckhead, right? I guess if you are familiar with Atlanta, it's right by Phipps and Lenox Mall on the corner. So right in the heart of Buckhead, which is really convenient if you live in Midtown, like a lot of us do, or if you live farther north in the suburbs, it's right in the middle of everything. Like I said, the culture is very family-oriented, very collaborative, very personal. Just because we are so small, we really know each other really well, which is great. And because of that, what I love about the Atlanta office is right off the bat, there's a lot of opportunity to have a leadership role in the office, especially with PC&D, so the social activities, also any fundraising we do. I, for example, started my my first year in the firm. I automatically became the Women's Network lead in the office, which I can talk about a little bit too, as well as a few other roles. So definitely a lot of opportunity with the smaller office environment, and I really love Atlanta, so happy to talk about it. Oh, and then our fun fact was, so last year, or this year, I guess, with the office rebranding, we also had an office rebranding, which is when we started really digging into our social awareness activities and stuff like that, as well as this whole making sure everyone's bringing their families to events and stuff. So the picture on the top underneath the Braves picture is all of us. We went and did a weekend getaway at a winery in Georgia, and so we did a wine tasting, and we all hung out for the weekend, and we could go to the spa and stuff like that. So it was really awesome, and awesome time to get to know each other better. So yeah.
Ryan, it looks like you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was just going to say I'll jump in on and represent Boston. Just excited to have all of you on the call today and share a little bit about our office. Just before I do that, introducing myself, I've been with the firm for about 5 years now after having spent my summer in New York, which was a summer associate. So I joined out of business school. Have been in the consumer and retail practice for a few years now, so that's where I focus my time, do some work similar to Phil with people and change and organization, but also on kind of strategic operations and kind of transforming businesses. So, I've really enjoyed my time, and a lot of that is due to the people I've met, especially within the Boston office. I think that similar to Emily, our culture in our office is also very tight-knit, friendly, family-friendly, focused on building close relationships, always willing to help each other. But you know, we're pretty active together, and we love doing things on, you know, hanging out in the office on Friday afternoons, but turning that into some sort of like wine nights out together, things like that. So I think it's really casual kind of environment. It's you know, one of the more recently established offices. We had one in Cambridge, which I think Phil spent a couple of years in as one of his many offices. But that was, it was moved for a little bit and then came back a couple of years ago. And so now it's actually comprised, crazy enough, of 50% women, which is not exact. We love to have that as a firm, but it doesn't always happen within all the offices. So I think that was a neat little fact that we learned. Where the office is it's right in, if you know Boston well, it's right in the financial district near South Station. It's, you know, it's ever growing. It feels like we add a few, we lose one, we add a few. So we keep it close, but we love doing stuff together. And, you know, some of the pictures we have are like a small intimate gathering for our winter party, where we rented out a smaller restaurant in Cambridge that was all farm to table, and really enjoyed you know, circulating, getting to have those kind of conversations with what everybody's doing and knowing what's going on. But yeah, it's a great culture. So I'll turn it over to, I think Kelly's going to talk about our next office.
Hi, everyone. My name is Callie Murphy. I am an associate out of the Chicago office. I was also a summer in the Chicago office in 2018. And actually, I grew up in the Mid-Atlantic, so I kind of fell in love with Chicago in the office in the summer and moved here for Kearney. So like New York, we are one of the larger offices. We have both management consultants and management services. So there's always someone around to get to know, and you can always meet new people. The great thing about being a large office, too, is there's always something going on, whether it's a kickball league in the summer. We have a women's network tea in December. There's generally something you can get involved with or do. We're also on the 40th floor, so we have great views in Chicago. We're located downtown. And of course, when you are in the office on Fridays, we have some of the best snacks. And so with that, I think I'll turn it over to the Dallas office.
Thanks, Kelly. Hey, everyone, I'm Josh. I've been, I guess, using Emily's analogy. I'm a rising sophomore in the firm now, so I've been here about 2 years. I like to adopt that term now. Yeah, so I've been here about 2 years. I'm a manager out of the Dallas office. Similar to Callie, I summered with the firm. I was a year ahead of her, so in 2017, and so kind of did my summer in the Dallas office, came back. I'm in our, probably talk about industries later, as Phil touched on. I'm in our ATI practice, aligned to there, so most of my work has been with aerospace and defense companies. And just a little bit about the Dallas office. I'd say it's pretty similar to what y'all just heard about Atlanta and Boston in terms of office size. We're probably a little larger than both of those, but not much. So similar culture in terms of the trade-off that you get with the smaller offices versus the larger offices of a more close-knit culture. Probably fewer events going on than Chicago has, but it's really casual environment. So that's I would say the culture of the Dallas office. One of the great things about our office is that we have a really high percentage of principals and partners, so senior leadership within the firm, and we're almost a 1-to-1 ratio right now with seniors versus juniors. So you get a lot of really good exposure there in our office, which is cool. Our fun fact here, our Texas office is pretty Texas themed. Our decorations are very Texas themed, and each room has a Texas name. So we have the Lone Star Room, Longhorn Room, a few local rivers and things like that. So I'd say that's hopefully a good overview of the Dallas office, and I will pass it off. I think we have New York next. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. My name is Myra. Nice to meet you. I am an associate out of the New York office, and I joined out of business school. I've been here with the firm about a year. I also summered the same time that Callie did, so summer of 2018, had a great summer and was excited to come back. I haven't aligned to a practice yet, but my duration with the firm so far, I've spent most of my projects on a large retail pharmacy client, and most of the work I've been doing has been in the LCO practice, which Phil talked about, so doing a lot of leadership and change. So it's been kind of cool to sort of be at the intersection of retail, health, and LCO and kind of see a mix of those things. So it's been a really interesting experience so far. So as far as the New York office, it's I think our second largest office with just over or just about 250 employees. And so that means it's really dynamic. There's always a lot going on, a lot of interesting and exciting events constantly. The office was recently remodeled as well. So there's some pictures here of the space, and it was remodeled to be much more open and collaborative, which has been really nice. So when you're there on Fridays, you're able to really interact and engage with all of your colleagues in a way that wasn't as accessible before. So it's been a really nice change. Then in terms of events that we do at the office, it's really a mix of everything because, everyone gets inspired to start a different club or activity. So it's really cool. Definitely big on the happy hours. And as you know, in New York, there's no shortage of fun rooftops to go to. So that's often a place where people will end up on Friday afternoons. Book clubs on Fridays, often the health club brings in different things to have people do massages or check up on your health, or like wellness fairs and things like that, yoga and meditation activities, and obviously always fun charitable events on the weekends as well. And I'd say it's not an unlikely activity to end up at karaoke after a fun sort of summer party or holiday event. So that's always a good time. In terms of fun facts about the office, we are right in Times Square, which maybe sounds daunting and overwhelming, but it's pretty cool to be in the center of everything. And we have great views of the city, and including a view of the Times Square ball that drops on New Year's Eve. And I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I've heard of Kearney colleagues going into the office on New Year's Eve and being able to celebrate the New Year there and be able to watch the ball drop. So that's pretty cool. And I will hand it over to the San Francisco office.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosanna Lim, and I'm a senior manager out of the San Francisco office in our health practice. I've been with the firm for almost 4 years, and I've actually been part of several Kearney offices throughout my career thus far. I actually did my summer internship during my MBA out of the Chicago office. Then when I returned full-time, I was part of the New York office for my first 3 years at Kearney, and then I recently moved to the San Francisco office last fall. And I'm from the Bay Area originally, so for me, it was always in my long-term plan to come back home and be part of the San Francisco office. We actually just moved to a new office location back in February earlier this year. So our former office, which was had more of like a financial district vibe to it, was in Soma, and we just moved to Jackson Square. You can see from some of the pictures here, it's more of like a startup vibe, brick walls, lots of plants. We have a cold brew coffee, beer on tap. But we opened our new office back in February. It was only open for a few weeks before we all had to close down for COVID. So we've had very limited time in our new office thus far, and our official kickoff and opening party is supposed to be later in the spring. So, that's still upcoming. We're all looking forward to it. So we are about 50 of us in the San Francisco office. So again, one of the smaller offices, so we get to know each other pretty well. And we're essentially the hub for Kearney. We're like the Kearney Pacific hub, I'd say. And so a lot of our colleagues kind of span across the West Coast from Seattle to Salt Lake City to LA. So we tend to concentrate our big events once a month where we have either like a big happy hour or like an office party event, so that everyone can plan ahead and make sure that we get as many people as possible to stop by the SF office on our Fridays, and then people travel after that. So now, last but not least, I think we have the Washington, D.C. office.
Thanks, Rosanna. Hi, everyone. My name is Dominic Gibbons. I'm a manager in our DC office and recently aligned to our health practice, like Rosanna. So in terms of the DC office and myself, so I joined the firm about 4 years ago, straight out of undergrad, where I went to Georgetown, which you can see from the map is just about directly across the water from where our DC office is. So the office itself is actually in Arlington, Virginia, which I'm not sure how many folks on the phone are familiar with DC, but that's actually relatively common for larger offices in the DC area to be based just across the river from the district itself in Arlington, Virginia. So that's where we're located. In terms of employees, there are about 100 or so employees in the DC office all in, and it's really comprised from a few different groups, which is part of what makes the office unique. I liked the Hoya shout out there on the chat. Thank you for that. But in terms of the DC office, so like the other offices, there's a mix of different management consultants, across different practices. You can kind of be located where you choose. But what's specific to the DC office is two additional, subsets or groups within the firm. So one, which Phil actually referenced earlier in the call, is our public sector and defense services practice. So that, for obvious reasons, is based in the Washington, D.C. office, and that is a decent chunk of that 100 employees you see listed there. And then the other group, which I have listed under our fun facts here, is our kind of in-house think tank for Kearney. So our Global Business Policy Council is a think tank within the firm, which advises both us as consultants and then also clients on kind of global trends in terms of, macroeconomics, politics, all those types of things. They provide that perspective both internally and externally, and that group is based in Washington, D.C., which is another kind of unique flavor of the office, which is reflective of, I think, D.C. as a city as well in terms of that focus. And then we speak to the culture of the office. I think three things that stand out for me. So similar to a lot of the Kearney offices, I think, we're highly connected as a firm. Therefore, all these offices are pretty connected and pretty socially active. So in D.C., we have weekly kind of impromptu happy hours, and then as well as some, more regularly planned events. I think someone said events around every month for one of the offices. It's probably a similar cadence for DC, and we have some photos there, whether it's, axe throwing with a smaller group or larger scale events like, baseball games and things like that. There's always something going on and something to look forward to in the office. And the second piece here, social impact focus. I know I mentioned that I think the office reflects DC as a town, and I think this is another area where that kind of pops up. And that DC as a city is very young, very vibrant, and very focused on social impact. And that's true of the DC office for Kearney as well. There's always a lot going on in terms of, service events, a focus on sustainability and giving back to the community. And then the last piece there, community feel. The DC office, I think in terms of size, is kind of in between. You have Chicago and New York with a few hundred employees, and then some of the other offices we've talked to today, which are a bit smaller. I think in size, we're kind of at a nice medium point where it's small enough that you do know most of the folks in the office, but it's also large enough to have scale for great events and to have that kind of socially vibrant culture to the office itself. I think that's coupled also with a nice mix of folks where you have some people in the DC office that have been there a very long time, and then you have some folks who are, maybe just living in DC for a couple of years in their 20s while they're with the firm. So I think that mix creates a real nice culture, and the office is very connected both formally through events, but then also we go to each other's weddings, we go to each other's birthday parties. It's a very interconnected office in that way. And I think lastly on the fun facts, I mentioned that the in-house think tank being located there, but like some of the other offices, we're actually recently going through some movement. We are actually under construction right now, which was just about a couple weeks before COVID kind of fully shut things down. We actually left the office anyway, because the office is being fully remodeled and modernized in 2020, which I think it should be done in the next few weeks. When we actually return to the office, I think is still to be determined a bit. But similar to some of the other offices, it is, there's been some investment to make it as modern and optimal as possible for today's, working situation. I think now I'm going to pass over to Phil to kick off the panel on the Q&A part.
Great. Thank you, Dominic. And thank you to all of our panelists and giving such a nice flavor for all our many offices around the U.S. And how they are distinguished from each other. But you guys have all asked a lot of great questions. So thanks to everyone who has submitted questions so far. And please continue to ask them in the Q&A box, and we'll get through as many as we can here. You've heard some of the great breadth of experience that the panel has today. So actually, Caroline, can we go jump up for a second? We're going to have a whole bunch of folks answering questions, and I'll try to get through as many as I can. So the first one is about the summer program, and this is actually hopefully relevant to most of you during your recruiting. What type of support do interns get outside of their engagement teams? So Callie, I know you did your summer a couple of years ago. Can you speak to maybe the kind of support you got outside of your engagement team?
Yeah, definitely. So of course, your core experience is with your summer project, your project manager, and getting to know Kearney through that. But there are also a bunch of other ways that you get connected to Kearney throughout your summer. So there's the formal ways where you have a mentor to guide you throughout your summer experience. They actually connect with you before you even get to Kearney, get to know you a little bit better and learn your interests. You're also a part of a cohort once you're in the internship. So typically the cohort is office-based, but since we're virtual this year, it's across geographies. And that's the chance to both get to know other folks doing an internship, learn about their different project experiences, and then you also have folks at the associate and manager level connecting with you every week to get to know Kearney better as well. And then on top of all that, there's usually an event going on Friday, whether it's a dinner with the partners or a happy hour with your internship cohort. That pretty much covers all of it. There's also the informal connections throughout. People are willing to get to know you.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Shout out to the recruiting team and everyone who's been helping to support our summer program this year. I know it's been a big success despite all the challenges. That's really been great to see a lot of the same experiences carry through in a virtual environment. We're getting a lot of this next question, and I think, Rosanna, you probably have a good perspective on it, but it's how do specific geographic locations focus on industries, and has that changed as we've pivoted to the new virtual model?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely one I had when I was, looking into Kearney as well. So, I mean, I'd say that where your office location is that doesn't prevent you from doing projects across various industries. We're not offices aren't specifically aligned to industries, but I think I would say that industries that tend to be in a geographic area tend to be a hotspot just by naturally, being close in proximity. For example, there's a lot of healthcare companies in Boston, so there tends to be a lot of healthcare, more quote-unquote localized healthcare work out there. There's a lot of retail in the Midwest and the Chicago area, so there tends to be a lot of retail work out there. But in terms of specific office concentrations, it just really depends on what the partners are working on, what the relationships are, and geography is really not a constraint in terms of what kind of industries you want to focus on.
Yeah, thanks, Rosanna, and I would very much second that. I think the firm is small enough that you can build a network really quickly across really whatever practice you want to, and it's been a big part of my experience at Kearney and for a lot of other folks in the panel as well. An interesting one might be on the sort of Kearney's uniqueness. Myra, can you speak to what makes Kearney unique from other consulting firms?
Sure, absolutely. So I actually think what was just touched on is a big thing that makes us unique from the management consulting firm perspective. It was one of the big reasons that I did choose Kearney is I didn't feel like I had to think through about my office and what practice I wanted to be working on in concert, right? I could pick make the unique decision and not feel like I had to be tied down to a specific type of work just based on where I lived. And I think the philosophy behind that is that, Kearney wants to staff the best of the best, regardless of where you are for a project, right? So looking at really staffing nationally to make sure that they're bringing the best teams together to deliver for the clients. I think that is a really nice, unique part of our firm. The other thing is just the size of the firm, which I know you touched on a bit earlier, Phil, when you gave the overview, but I think the way we like to think about it is really it's sort of like that Goldilocks size. It's big enough that we have access to all the top clients, a lot of the Fortune 500, and a lot of really great, interesting work that's happening. At the same time, the firm is small enough that you are able to really build a super strong network across the firm and build close connections and really be able to, I think, make a big impact early on. A lot of our offices are small enough that you are able to, like Emily said, get involved in a leadership role really early on. I think there's an opportunity to really get to know people really well. And the partners are really engaged and principals are really engaged. So I think you see that really strong engagement and collaboration as a result of the size of the firm that enables you to do that in a way that's harder to do at other firms. So those are the big two things from my perspective. And I'd say in general, I have found the culture and the type of people at Kearney to be, really collaborative, I think, obviously super bright and sharp, but then just really accessible as well. And so I think that sort of casual informality and the way you're able to actually engage with your colleagues makes it so that you're able to foster better relationships, but also just learn more collaboratively and learn more quickly than you might in other settings.
Awesome, thanks, Mara, and very much agree with your points there. It's a nice balance we found at Kearney here so far. Here's another one we're getting a decent amount of traffic on. And Emily, maybe you can speak to this given your path at the firm, but if folks are interested in working in a special
You're kind of breaking up a bit.
Can you guys hear?
Phil, you are breaking up a little bit. Oh, yes.
I'm back. Sorry about that. So the question that I think might be helpful is around specialist paths. And so, Emily, if you can speak to pursuing specialist skills or kind of developing a particular practice, I think we're getting a lot of questions on that versus staying a generalist at the firm.
Yep, for sure. Perfect. So I don't think I said this before, but I came into the firm, I have an engineering background, but I came in as in our analytics practice. And most recently I've transferred in, what's kind of morphed into our strategic operations practice. And I've been really focused on supply chain in specifically the retail industry. So I'm pretty specialized at this point, which I've really enjoyed because that's from the beginning what I've really wanted to go after. But what I think is great about the firm is you do have the opportunity to be a generalist if you really don't know what you want to do and you're coming to consulting for those reasons. Or if it's, oh, I know what I want to do in my case, but I want to see that across different companies or industries, you have the opportunity to kind of set your own path and do that as well. Obviously, the more senior you get, the more control you have, I would say, over the projects that you're working on. But even from the beginning, I always felt like my voice was heard, and I really could kind of go after, set up time with people that worked on the industries or types of work that I was interested in. And I always felt like I had the support there, and they always pulled me into their projects as much as possible. So I think there's both options if you want to be a generalist, and I would definitely clarify it has nothing to do with your office. What's great, something I'd add on to the earlier questions is because the way we staff, I think it doesn't limit you from an industry perspective, but also from like a network perspective. I would say that's why we are so close as a firm, is because the way we staff is you're always working on projects with people from different offices. And like I worked with Myra on a project. I did a training with Dominic. It's like you always feel like you know everybody on the calls that you're on, which is awesome. And I think that comes from smaller firm too, but also from a networking perspective and getting on the types of projects that you want. It never feels like your office is a limiting factor in that.
Thanks, Emily. So we get to, I think, recognize where we are right now in 2020, and a couple of great questions around how the firm has reacted to that. So Ryan or anyone else, maybe you can speak to how Kearney has adapted to kind of the COVID-affected environment, and specifically how it's pertained to the sort of early consulting experience at the firm.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I think we've done a great job. So I'm gonna toot our horn a little bit on that one. So I think right, there's a couple things that are happening. So one, I think management increased their communications by a significant amount. So we're doing, like, it started as weekly, but now it's a little bit more bi-weekly as we kind of got more into the flow of it, kind of communicating what our path forward is, understanding how we're going to do that. And then I think second to that is that, teams have adapted and they've been supported by our management service colleagues who have helped us kind of adapt to this new sort of ways of working with everything being remote. So my team started on a new client, which is a little bit hard to build relationships and rapport via webcam, but we've done it pretty successfully. And I think that using those kind of tools that we have and adapting kind of our touch points rather than being in a team room together, we need to like set up that time and be more proactive about it. So I think everybody's kind of just doing their best, being flexible, trying to make it happen to kind of keep continuity with the work that we've been doing, because our clients are still important. And the one I've been working on is on healthcare, and a lot of what they're working on is kind of developing tests for COVID. So I think keeping continuity in their supply chain and the things that we've tried to help them solve over the past couple of months have been really important to keep the business going. So, I think from that aspect, it has been great. And I think that, from a summer associate perspective, I had one on my team who kind of rolled into it. It was not exactly what she had envisioned when she signed her offer back in February, but adapted to kind of being on camera and having those touch points and being flexible to kind of understand everybody's challenges in their own homes and all of the things that are going on has been really nice to see. And I think that, we'll continue to work this way as best we can and just stay open, honest, and communicate well with each other on expectations.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, and agree. I know Alex Liu, our managing partner, talks a lot about how we're in the world of the no normal, and we've been constantly adapting how we work with ourselves and our clients. And I don't think anyone is expecting to go back to the way we were doing work, even 6 months ago. Going forward, we've learned so much in the past, 5 months about how we can be effective. It's really encouraging. I guess I just want to throw it to the rest of the panel. Any other reflections on how your life or how your sort of work within your office community has been affected by COVID, and anything you've seen that's particularly useful in helping to work around it?
I can chime in a bit here. I will say that we as a firm have also been working side by side with our clients on their COVID-19 responses. So my client for the last, since the beginning of this year, has been a healthcare provider, and clearly they've been very impacted by, the COVID-19 pandemic. So our project team essentially transitioned back in March from our typical project work to getting hands down with helping them procure PPE, doing some analytics on their ventilators to make sure that they got there to patients, looking at staffing requirements, and they'll need to bring in extra nurses. So we really got down into the details to make an impact alongside our clients in their COVID-19 response, which was pretty interesting, very real, probably one of the most impactful pieces of work I've had experience with at the firm thus far.
I can second that. Mine's a little different, but same experience where I worked with a grocery retailer in the first half of the year. That's where I've done most of my work. And so we were in the middle of our project and COVID hit, and obviously grocery companies are all hands on deck right now, or at least they were in March, trying to meet the demand that was coming into the grocery store that they've never seen before. So in the middle of our project, and like I said, I do ops work. So it was all the people that are in the field, day-to-day responders. So they were swamped. And so we shifted our focus to say, okay, how can we help you serve your customers best during this time? And how can we just be there for you and do what needs to be done, even though our original plan had kind of got put on pause.
Yeah. I think those are great examples. And there's a lot of thought leadership out there about how businesses are reacting to COVID and how we've been helping our clients. But I think the stories you're hearing from the panel, this is a unique time to be engaged in the business world. And it's really exciting for a lot of us to be able to help and to have an impact in real time. So thanks to everyone for sharing their thoughts. We're getting a few questions that I think are important on sort of people development within the firm. So one question is, how would the panel panelists characterize the relationships between analyst, associate, and the partners and more experienced consultants. Dominic, the last time I checked, you were like a BA, but it says you're a manager now. So maybe you can speak to how that growth has been and the relationships you've seen sort of in your different years at Kearney.
Sure. I've actually started shaving as well since we last met, Phil. But no, it's a great question, and I think, as Phil said, I joined as a business analyst in 2016, so it's 4 years ago, which really, in terms of the development that I've been lucky to have, is not a very long time in terms of years. It's we have a pretty accelerated track, and not just promoting people for the sake of promoting people. It's because people really do get the opportunities to develop rapidly, and I think part of the reason we're able to have that experience, and in my experience, why that's been the case, is that the way our teams operate, and it's indicative of the way we've talked about the firm, I think, on this call today, is that we're a very flat organization overall and very connected, and our teams are no exception to that. So if you're on a team of 5 or 6 people, it's not uncommon for the partner and the principal to want to hear the business analyst or the senior business analyst's perspective just as much as the manager or associate or whoever the other team members may be. I think we have a culture that's very straightforward and humble and connected, and that lends itself to folks not being afraid to step up and ask questions and to give their opinion on things. And I think that enables you to grow more quickly because you're not afraid of messing up or failing. And I think creating that culture of teams that way helps people move more quickly. And then also there's the other piece of it, which is really just getting the mentorship you need along the way. And I've been very lucky in my experience when I think of my few years at the firm so far. I've had some, formal managers and formal mentors, and then some that are, less formal, just people that I might know through the DC office that have taken an interest in my development and, might be able to give more of a kind of third-party external perspective if I have a question on what's going on in my project or how do I navigate this or that. And I think that blend of formal and informal mentorship and management come together very naturally just because of our firm's culture and the way things work. And I think when you have all that come together, you do develop very quickly. And the good thing about our firm, and I'll close with this, is that when you have all that development, you get rewarded for it. And we promote people based on potential and performance. And in my experience, I've been able to get promoted relatively quickly and see that development manifest in terms of what my role in the firm is. And I think that's not necessarily the case in all industries or in all consulting firms the same way. I think it's something that differentiates us and makes it a great place to work, especially for people that are coming in either out of undergrad or out of B school as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. I think that's exactly on point. And, our philosophy, at least mine for teams certainly is, Kelly, keep me honest here. If you're ready to do the work, we'll put you in a place to do it. So it's definitely a place where you can grow a lot if you're ready for it. So one last sort of point on the mentorship thing, because we're getting a few additional questions there. How have Kearney mentorship programs transitioned in this virtual environment? Now that we're all working from home, how are we continuing to maintain mentorship? Josh, I guess any reflections on that from where you sit in your experience so far with mentorship and kind of the remote work element?
Yeah, no problem, Phil. I can do it both directions. So how I've kind of mentored my mentees and how I've been mentored. So yeah, I would say the virtual environment has definitely made it tougher to do those kind of informal, what I would call just kind of office step-ins and coffee chats within the office. But we've done a great job, I think, again, to kind of echo what Ryan wanted to toot our own horn. I think we've done that as an office as well, not only just senior leadership, but I've been able to retain my touch points with my mentor despite being virtual. So whereas before it was maybe more organic of me just kind of stepping in and saying hi and giving updates, it's been a little bit more I guess formally scheduled, but just needed to be able to set up the virtual, the chat experience. I would say the other thing that's on the formal side. On the informal side, my project teams have also, scheduled our fair share of client-focused meetings, but also kind of fun events. So similar to what an office event would be, but also just a fun team event and also chats for career paths and things of that nature. So that's been a huge help. So that's kind of me getting mentored by my principals and partners. I think it was Callie mentioning the resources we have for summer associates. So I have a current summer associate mentee and have been able to, I think, relatively easily just meet them virtually. I've never met them in person, so I guess meet them and then understand and get to know them and help them grow in their time in the firm all over video call. So I think we have great resources in place and have leveraged those throughout this time.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, and definitely agree on the making time. It's thinking about relationships a little more structured, but they are super important to growth here. And you'll see the word apprenticeship all across a lot of Kearney's materials and our discussions. It really is at the core of how we develop folks here at the firm. We're getting a couple questions on diversity networks and programs at Kearney. So Emily, I know you mentioned you're involved with the Women's Network in Atlanta. Would you mind reflecting, and then anyone else on the panel who wants to jump in on kind of some of the different elements of what that looks like at Kearney and the activities that are involved there?
Yep, sure. Yeah, so I mentioned I'm the Women's Network lead for Atlanta, and then also we recently launched a strategic ops practice Women's Network, and I'm on the leadership team for that as well. And so what we do is there's a few, I guess, goals of that. One is just connecting women across the firm and having like that community and open place for conversation and just really getting to know each other, as well as pushing within the firm, building our relationship with the allies, and just pushing like recruiting as well. And so we do a lot of events for that. Some examples where we have all America's Women's Network events. We're right now planning like an alumni panel for next month, which we're going to have alumni from Kearney across multiple industries and across different levels come back and talk about their experience since leaving the firm and their experience at Kearney and kind of what they've learned along the way. We also we had an event last month that was like about where we had each, I think like 10 different people come and just talk about themselves and their story and kind of what brought them to Kearney and what they're doing now. And so just building that community has really been great, I would say. And then also I saw some questions about diversity and inclusion in general, and something that the Atlanta office has been doing, and I think all across the firm, has just really been having open dialogue about these things. And I think that's something in the last couple months, which has been really great, is just having open conversation and making sure people's voices are heard. I think is really awesome thing that the firm's been doing.
Great, thanks, Emily. I guess anyone else want to reflect on either some of the diversity works that we have at the firm, or maybe some of the social impact work that we do, if anyone has experience or thoughts on how that's been moving into 2020?
I can jump in on one quick thing on the social impact. So recently, a number of our colleagues were engaged with the Partnership for New York City on basically what are the private and public partnerships that'll need to happen, and kind of what are the actions need to be taken by both of those groups in conjunction to basically help New York recover from COVID. Right? Obviously, it's not done yet, but what are the opportunities? Right? So we covered things about healthcare availability. My personal contributions with a couple others were around supply chain resiliency, right? A lot of people or a lot of supply chains are built for global, but things got stranded, right? So thinking about how do we move local, but it was really just kind of having that sort of impact of how do we help the people in New York kind of reestablish themselves and be able to get the goods that they need. So just one example of many that I've heard about that we do in the firm, and working with different nonprofits to kind of have a good impact. I mean, because it's kind of just a broad mission, I think, within the firm, is that we want to do positive things in business. So just my personal experience.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And I very much agree. I think one of the things I've heard a lot from leadership, in addition to the enhanced communication on COVID, has been looking at our responsibility as a firm, as corporate citizens, to take care of our own communities and to be a little more proactive with that work. So it's been really encouraging to see the firm take steps forward on a whole lot of those different areas across social impact as we've kind of even still been working remotely. Got one question, which is good, and then maybe we can have a couple different folks answer it, but would love to hear the panelists discuss a project they worked on that was particularly interesting or meaningful, and why. So what are some fun project stories we have that are worth sharing with the group here? Myra, do you have one for us?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So I mentioned I've been doing a lot of work with a retail pharmacy client and have been doing a lot of work in their organization. So one of the project that we were first working on was looking at their sort of like field level or more corporate level organization, and then that transformed into a project of really looking at their organization on the store level. And so that's been really interesting to kind of see see the flow of how we were thinking about it at one level of the organization, see the impact it made there, and the client really wanting us to then carry our work through all levels of their organization. And so what we've been able to do is it required us to spend a lot of time physically at their stores, interviewing a lot of their employees, understanding the work that they do, understanding what the gaps were in terms of the roles in their organization, what they were seeing as skill gaps or needs to be able to perform their jobs better, being able to learn where there may be some redundancy of roles, or where roles maybe were designed to be doing one thing, but really in practice doing something different. And so it became like a really cool listening tour of seeing how store employees were feeling and what they wanted more from their employer. And so that turned into a series of really interesting workshops with our client, where we really assessed their organizations and how their stores were structured, all the different roles in their stores, how it was or wasn't meeting their customer needs. And it gave us a really good opportunity to do a lot of interesting industry benchmarks and seeing what cool trends there were in the retail space in terms of how companies are organizing their resources in stores. So now we're sort of wrapping our design phase and going into implementation, and it's been really interesting to sort of see it more end to end. And it's really required us to wear lots of different hats, both from sort of that initial brainstorming and conceptualizing and initial role design to now being much more tactical and practical and working with their legal team and their HR teams to sort of reshape what these roles look like. And obviously, a lot of our recommendations are sort of hinging on how we can make our client be much more efficient and cost-effective in a lot of ways, but then also how we can design more meaningful roles for the people that are there, right? So what I've been also able to work on is looking at their learning and development programs. So now that we're redesigning these roles, what are the skills and tools and training that these employees need in order to be super effective in their jobs and to be very engaged in their jobs as well? How do we design compelling career paths for them so that their top talent really stays retained within the organization and is able to grow and see that potential? So we're really able to look at it from perspectives, and it's been interesting to be able to, I feel the impact of being able to say what I'm designing here is going to create a more meaningful job for somebody and give them the opportunities to learn more in their jobs and be able to make them feel like they're driving more of an impact in their role. And really, we're thinking through how can people be, either having more specialist roles that they're able to become, be leaders in whatever space that they're working in a way that's been different from how they've conceived their roles in the past. So it's been really interesting to see, and we've built because we've worked with this client for so long now, we're a really tight-knit family with them too. And so to your point earlier on how we've been engaging differently with clients, we do trivia nights with them, and it's all 30 of us across Kearney and the client. We have a lot of fun with it. We really work really collaboratively with our clients, I think, in general at Kearney. We're sitting across the table from them all the time. But that's been a really, really interesting thing for me.
Great. Thanks, Myra. And that's, I think just a great example of how a lot of our work with clients just can get to be so hands-on and collaborative. It's a really core part of Kearney's identity and the work we do. It's funny. I think there's a stereotype of consultants sort of like sitting in a conference room and coming up with all the ideas on their own, like crunching away data and figuring it out. And then sort of presenting the strategy to the board, and we do that part. But I think your example of sort of getting your sleeves rolled up and understanding things really at the ground level. I mean, that's a lot of the core of Kearney's work. We really understand our clients' problems in detail, and that helps us build a better connection. So I'm really glad you laid that one out. It's I think a good example of a great Kearney project. Thank you. So we're actually near the top of the hour, so I think we're actually going to close questions. And Caroline, is there anything else for our audience that we need to run through before we wrap up today?
Yeah, of course. So I just want to take the time to thank all of our consultants on our panel today. We really appreciate all of your answers. So if you do have any questions that weren't answered today, we do have 2 email addresses that you can send those to. For undergraduate students, you can send your questions to careers.ug@kearney.com. And for MBA students, careers.mba@kearney.com. We also recommend that we do have some upcoming webinars this season for both undergrad and MBA. So go to our website and check those out. And you can also sign up for our newsletters as well for just some more insight within Kearney. But thank you for attending today. We really appreciate it, and have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.